We're live. How's it going?
It's going good.
That's amazing. I'm happy to finally have you on our show today. We've got a lot of things to cover, and I want to know more about you, about your journey. And as you know, the One Self podcast explores wellness, personal growth, authentic connections to empower intentional living and help you grow your brand, life, and business. So, tell me, Benji, like a little bit about you and your journey and how you became this comic, the people's comedian.
Well, I've been on stage since I was a little kid. I recently, like when I was probably in my 20s, I realized I wanted to do stand up comedy. So then I started doing stand up comedy in my mid 20s. I've been at it for 19 years now.
Great.
So, I've been at it for a little bit. It's definitely part of my life. Um, and, I was always a kid that would say the funny thing at the wrong time. So,
Yeah,
it just kind of came natural.
it definitely did. It definitely did. Um, and also, you came to Yuma. You came to my city, and I got to see you perform. We got to produce a show together, and that was a lot of fun.
Of
And I
course.
always enjoy, going to your shows and supporting. I know you were living in San Diego for a while, and now you're in the big city, big sin city, Las Vegas, Nevada. So how's that going? How has the transition been from producing shows now in San Diego, from San Diego to now Vegas?
Well, well, right now I'm currently looking for venues in Las Vegas. I've been mainly just been focusing on getting regular work to be able to stabilize the situation.
Yes, yes.
Um, but the biggest difference is obviously the heat. It's
Yeah.
it's really hot. It gets really really hot, insanely hot sometimes.
Hmm.
It rarely rains here. The people are a little bit different, but on the same, still good.
Yes, yes,
So,
absolutely.
like it's just about making the connection with the next batch of people to be able to start something going here. With
That's
comedy.
great. Yeah, I know you've been busy touring and, helping other comics get gigs and always finding the most up and coming talent, but also being a creative. I mean, you create your own flyers, you have your own business where you can promote the shows also for people. So it's more than just being a producer. I mean, you have to do the social media and you're constantly helping even me as a PR professional, giving me new ways to look at things. So I really appreciate you and the creativity that you bring to this business.
Well, no problem. Always glad to help.
Absolutely. So let's start at the beginning. Okay, let's talk about the Benji. What sparked that journey into comedy, and how did it evolve into like producing your own shows? So,
Well, I got addicted in preschool when I got my first big applause break after doing like a Thanksgiving little recital thingy,
mhm.
and I was the only one that would dance the which is now politically incorrect Indian dance. But I got a large applause ovation from the audience, and I kind of got addicted to that.
Mhm.
So then it evolved into me actually getting into comedy finally in my mid 20s, and it evolved in the sense to where I was doing a lot of shows and I wasn't getting a lot of opportunities, and,
Mhm.
and because I've been a tech stagehand, since I was 12
Mhm.
years old, essentially, I was like,
Mhm.
well, why don't I just put together my own show? And
That's cool.
that's how it kind of started, and I've been doing
That's
that
great.
ever
That's
since.
great. So the jokes are within you, my friend. You're always we'll be on a phone call, and then the next thing I know, he just like he knows how to break the like, seriousness, and it's like okay, it wasn't that bad after all.
Yeah, just
So
about
yeah,
softening it up. I mean,
yes, and
not to
finding.
take things seriously. Like if the more you take things seriously, the more it's gonna affect you.
Hmm.
So like anything that you can just discard, by an accident or something random, and
Hmm.
especially if you can find the funny in it, and which
Hmm.
is what us as comedians, that's what we do.
Hmm.
We go into tough situations, tough topics, and we make it funny. So it's kind of
Exactly.
like helps other people deal with it. the same way,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm. I know when I was going through a rough moment, I think it was like a breakup I had gone through. I every Friday I was like, okay, I need to get myself out of this rut, and so I would go to these comedy shows, and then eventually I met comedians like yourself, and then I was like, hey, the amount of joy I got from just going there and just meeting different people, different energy, I realized, wow, like you know what, life can't be this serious all the time. You have to find ways to laugh and bring joy and spark joy in your life. And so I never thought, you know, back then that I would ever get into producing my own shows or even collaborating with people like you. So I appreciate you for believing in that journey. And, you know, I learned so much throughout the years being at this. And we obviously meet people that want the best for us, but then we also meet people that don't. And the industry in the entertainment, you can test to that. Like, it's not easy. It's definitely
Yeah.
not easy. So,
No, it's not. But you hit it on the nail. You know, it's about, you know, sometimes what we do, we jumpstart, you know, people's, you know, positivity. You know,
mhm,
because sometimes people don't know how to do it themselves. And if you
mhm,
show up to a comedy show and you get a unique point of view that makes you laugh, especially on a topic that is, you know, ailing you, harming you,
mhm,
making you feel down, you know, helping people by, like I said, jump starting that, how to look at it funny, it always
mhm.
helps, you know. So, and then what you said, yeah, it hasn't been easy. There's been a lot of rough patches, you know,
Yep.
and the entertainment in any music, comedy,
Mhm,
other arts, theater, you know, there's always that you know, overbearing, you
mhm.
know, floating sense of you know, misappropriated
Yep.
competition, you know, competitive attitude, because you know,
Mhm.
in the end, we're all here together, and sometimes people take that competitive, you know, notion and they take it too far,
Yep.
you know.
Yep.
And but that's a lot of people, you know, they think you need to be cutthroat to be good at this.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, there's a lot of competition, but the thing is, you know yourself as a performer and what how you bring people joy because like you are the people's comedian. You know, you've competed, you've done a lot, you've helped people success in their business, and there's not a lot of guys and performers out there that do that. You know, just like with me in PR, it's like I have you have to find what makes them unique because that's what's going to spark the joy of the audience. And then also like you have to be a good person. Like you have to show up for yourself. Like
yeah,
you have to have your you know your social media out so people can follow you. Like you can't be you know some a Netflix special type person without doing the work and promoting yourself and following your audience and building that positivity in them to be like, hey, I want to follow this guy, I want to go to his next show. Like you have to be funny too, and that takes work because you have to memorize your stuff, you have to promote yourself, and that's how you show up a little different than many others, you know.
yeah, there's a lot of people out there that, you know, that's their goal, you know, they want to get a Netflix special, myself included. And
Mm-hmm.
these are some of the things that I do, you know, I try and promote myself efficiently, you know,
Mm-hmm.
while I prepare my sets, and I prepare and I write and I
Yep.
prepare. And I say that a lot of times because it's about just, you know, the preparation of it. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's other people who aren't really that interested, and they kind of just want to have fun, and it's
Yep.
perfectly fine, you know. But like
Exactly.
for those people that want to get to the next level, it takes, you know, certain dedication, and it
Yep.
takes work, you know. And then it definitely takes you know, a little bit of luck to be able to be found out, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because not everybody can just, you know, do this and that, and
Right.
like you get a diploma, you get a Netflix special.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that easy. You have to,
Yeah.
you know, be prepared, be ready, and especially when the, you know, prepare yourself for when the opportunity presents itself, because if the opportunity presents itself, it's too late to get ready, you
Correct.
know. And
Correct.
so you just have to be ready.
Yep, you have to have your branded photos, a good electronic press kit. You have to audition.
Yeah,
You know, you don't just get Hollywood stages without having some sort of following, which, you know, it sucks that you have to be constantly pushing followers, but at the same time, we're in this digital era where people care about that stuff if they're going to start promoting you for their brands and things like that. So it's more than meets the eye. It's not just get on stage and just talk. It's about just like finding those moments where people are laughing and they're following you as a person for being a good person, but also being funny and and doing what you'd love to do.
Well, if you want to get into Hollywood and into that space, you definitely, those are some prerequisites you definitely need.
Hmm.
You need to be able to promote yourself. Not just
Hmm.
be funny, because funny is probably the hardest part to be. But right after that, right under that, being able to promote yourself
Hmm.
properly, and give yourself the opportunity to be seen. That's the
Hmm.
next hardest spot. But you're
Absolutely.
absolutely right.
100%. So, what inspired the creation of Up Comedy shows and what sets it apart from other comedy platforms?
Well,
Because this is your business. Yeah.
up comedy comes from the word, of staying up.
Hmm.
When people are down, or they're bummed out, it's like, hey, you tell people, hey, stay up, man. So
Yes.
that's where the up portion comes from it, and that's essentially what up comedy shows, was created for. It
Hmm.
wasn't just, to have a show somewhere. It was to give an audience a great experience, to give the comedians a great experience, and to give the venue a great experience and a good turnout, because
Hmm.
it's all together. So, that's what separates us from others, on top of the fact that we have an in-house design team,
Hmm.
promotions team,
Hmm.
so like, combined with several, elements that we provide. And if the venue complies, like putting up posters and sharing the flyers, it's
Hmm.
going to ensure that it's going to be a good night, because people are going to know it's going to
Hmm.
be a good show. And sometimes
Absolutely.
it comes out from the design. If you
Yes.
get some lame design that just looks like, like some little kid did it, it's not
Hmm.
going to give a lot of confidence to an audience. But if you look at a professionally done flyer, poster,
Hmm.
promotion,
Hmm.
it's more than likely to have people, be motivated to come out. And then when they
Absolutely.
come out, you give them a good show, you give them a good experience,
Hmm.
you know, you, by the
You,
comics that you got,
absolutely.
and then giving the comics a good experience. So
Hmm.
overall, that's pretty much what separates us most. That we're mainly focused on giving everybody involved
Yes.
a good experience,
Yes.
and getting the venue their return on investment, whatever it
Hmm.
may be.
Absolutely. And then the nice thing about Up Comedy and what you do is like you curate the shows and the energy of the people. So like, the set will have three people, but they're strong comics to build up the energy, And and you wear a lot of hats. I see you in the front, I see you in the back, I see you, with the audio guys. I mean, you go above and beyond. And then even before the show, like you're already promoting it online. You made sure that the venue gets seen, um, and you also follow up, which is great because it's more than just I just came and performed with my guys. You have the whole package with the up comedy where it's like from start to finish, which is awesome. And so I love
Yeah,
that
no,
about
we
you.
like to cover our bases, and whenever you execute something, execute a plan, you always want to review and see what you did good, what you can do
Hmm.
better.
Hmm.
Especially when it comes to the venue itself.
Hmm.
And I mean, the audience can't respond all together because they're gone, but usually
Exactly.
we get a response from them, and then obviously the comics. How do they like it? How do they like the
Hmm.
experience?
Hmm.
What do they want to do it again? Especially
Exactly.
the better the comics, the more you want. Not like you know newer comics don't deserve the same type of
It's
love,
different.
but like if we have bigger ticket comics coming in, we definitely want to give them a better experience than
Hmm.
they've had in other local spots. So
Exactly. Yep, yep. And it's a hard life. When you're on the road, you're out of your house. You have to get to know the new ins and outs of the venue. You have to perform, and hopefully you bring enough audience to that the show is successful. But even then, I guess the more you practice your craft, the better you become. Just like an event person, the more you practice how you promoted the timeline you needed, communicating with the venue so that everything comes into place perfectly so that you're not stressed out the week before like, oh, there's not enough tickets, or oh, this is not working out. So you have to stay organized, stay on top of it, just like you would with a second show or third show, and follow up. That's the main one too.
absolutely, you have to. It's self reflection. Like I
Mhm.
just mentioned previously, it's about looking at what you did, and
Mm-hmm.
hopefully you did a lot of good things right, and you keep doing those, and the
Mm-hmm.
things that you can do better, you just work on them,
Exactly.
and you
Exactly. I love that.
adjust the game plan to make it,
Mhm.
more successful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, as both a performer and producer, how do you balance like the creative side of who you are and then the business side of comedy? Like, what do you do? How do you distinguish?
Well, since I've been a producer before I was a stand-up comic, the
Mm-hmm.
production aspect of it has always been important.
Mm-hmm.
Having everything working properly, having
Sure.
sound, having music, having lighting.
Mm-hmm.
So like I mentioned before, for me, it goes hand in hand because I'm a comedian, and what I
Correct.
want is to give everybody a great experience.
Mm-hmm.
That includes myself because a lot
Correct.
of times, like you said, I wear many hats. So sometimes I have to
Mm-hmm.
host, sometimes I have to feature, sometimes I
Mm-hmm.
even have to headline. You
Correct.
know, but ultimately the production part of it always has to be, tip top. That way everybody gets the best version of it
Mm-hmm.
because performing with a bad sound or with no lighting,
Make it.
little things like that, it really affects, it impacts the experience.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
So for me it goes hand in hand,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much, like when it's show day, like I'm right before I go on stage, I'm straight production, having everything work. But once that's done, I switch over to either I'm gonna host or I'm gonna feature or I'm gonna headline, you
Mm-hmm.
know and that's kind of how the balance comes through. One, I want, as a comedian, to be part of a well produced show,
Yeah.
and as a producer, I want all my comedians, not just myself, to
Mm-hmm.
have to be part of a well produced show, because that's just gonna, you know,
People talk
uh,
about it
yeah,
afterwards, and
yeah,
they, yeah,
and the audience itself, feels the impact of a good produced show, because you can
hmm,
always tell when things are half-assed or they're not done right,
of course, of course,
But yeah,
100%.
so that's that.
100%. It speaks volumes, even like the type of photographer you have, because afterwards people want to
Yeah,
post pictures of their experience or talk about their experience or say, "Hey, you got to come to that show. It, made me laugh. It made my day." You want to have people smiling when they get out of there. And so, yeah, the lighting matters, the sound quality matters, the type of comics you have matter, um, and just making sure that it flows, because things can come up, but it's just like being on top of it, even though now you're like, oh, the event's here, but there's still a lot. It's not over till it's over. So you got to keep
exactly.
your hat on and pivot wherever you need to, and make it happen.
Yeah, because like in anything, nothing goes 100%. There are
Hmm.
times where we have comics that have a bad day, and we just have to get over it.
Yeah.
Myself included, I've had a couple bad days, not as many as I used to,
Hmm.
but um, you just have to kind of get through it, and get
Yeah, yeah.
past it, and in the end finish strong. That's why our headliners are always the centerpiece to everything, because
Hmm.
as long as we finish strong, everybody forgets what happened before.
Exactly, exactly. And then you have to also be okay with people who maybe say like, "Boo, you suck," or those people that shout in the audience, and sometimes they're not always nice.
Well,
So what do you
hecklers.
do? What do you do
Well,
in those situations?
when it comes to hecklers, they don't say "boo, you suck," but they make it feel like that when they interrupt and they heckle.
Hmm. Yeah.
And sometimes hecklers think that they're helping, and the
Hmm.
best thing you can do is just, if you have the chops for it, is get over it by just having a good comeback or having
Hmm.
something good to say.
Hmm.
The one thing you can't do is take it personal and get upset, because that
Exactly.
usually leads to uncomfortableness,
Hmm.
and it ruins the show.
It
So
does. It does. 'Cause you can feel the energy right away.
yeah, yeah. So
So
sometimes there's a heckler that'll come in and want to say something, and you say the right perfect thing, and you just get extra points just because
yep.
you managed to wrangle that horsey. But yeah, that's not kind of
Absolutely.
how we do it.
Absolutely. So, can you walk us through the process of organizing a successful comedy show, from booking talent to filling seats? Like, can you give us one tip that we can use or our audience can use?
Well, first of all, like everything has to be custom. You can't cookie cutter stuff, because
Hmm.
not one venue is the same as others. There
Hmm.
might be, a bar show because you've done bar shows, but the patrons might be different. So you
Hmm.
need to figure out what type of people the venue has in order for you to start catering to that.
Correct.
You start shaping the show. You already know what type of comics you're gonna
Hmm.
have, and from there it's just about coming to an agreement with the venue about them promoting the show, because
Hmm.
that's one of the most important things. If they don't
Correct.
promote the show, you know we can't just bring people out of nowhere.
Yeah.
A lot of the the income comes in from the people that are regulars and that come in and they're just
Correct.
enjoying a different night in their favorite bar or one of
Hmm.
their favorite venues, what have you. And that's it. So it's just about taking everything into consideration,
Hmm.
as to catering to whatever they need. So
Correct.
if it's so
Absolutely.
if it's a Latino bar, you're gonna book Latino comics. If it's
Hmm.
a VFW, you're gonna book veterans.
Correct.
And
It's just
such
people
like
can
that.
align with. They can align with,
Exactly, where
you know.
you're aligning with the audience.
Correct.
Like usually wine bars or what have you. We have a lot of lady lineups because
Hmm.
ladies love wine. You
Yes, we
know,
do.
so that's what it is. It's just being able to adapt to whatever the venue needs is probably my best tip. Being
Hmm.
able to adjust, have the lineup, have the roster of comics, if you may, to
Yes.
be able to cater to that,
Mm.
to the needs of the venue.
Exactly. And just having enough time to promote and market it, that I would stress that a lot because sometimes it's like they give 2 weeks to advertise and it's like, no, it needs to be showing up a few times on
Needs
social
to be
media
at least. I mean, the best I've done with short amount of time is at least a month.
at least a month. Yeah.
Because like I've done a lot of monthly shows, so
Hmm.
within a month, it still works, especially if the venue is cool with sharing on their social media and
Hmm.
putting up posters around the venue. It helps. Just reminding people
Absolutely.
that there's going to be a comedy show. Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, my next question is, what's one moment from your comedy career that completely changed your perspective, either on stage or behind the scenes? Like, is there that one moment that like stands out to you?
yeah, it was when I turned. I guess I turned the page onto being who I really am. Because initially, when you start doing your stand up, you come in like kind of cookie cutter,
Mm-hmm.
and it was when I finally just kind of released myself and let my personality show and let
Hmm.
me be me. And then I have jokes.
Yeah.
That's why I say, like I'm funny and I have jokes.
Yep.
So that's kind of the moment that, things got better for me comedically.
Hmm.
As far as production value, it's just been like times that cables don't work. So
Hmm.
like I always try and test out my cables and all my equipment to be sure that we're not
Yeah.
gonna have any of those issues.
True.
You
True.
know, so that's happened to me before too. So those are two experiences where it really did change a lot for me.
Hmm.
And the
Just
comedy
get better
sense
and
and
better.
production.
You get better and better with each
Yeah,
show.
yeah. Like I mean, sometimes you need those to wake you up and teach you
Hmm.
something. If you
Yep.
especially if you're susceptible to learning and
Hmm.
understanding that shit happens, but if you live to fight another day, you can fix those things and make it better and prevent
Absolutely.
those problems.
100%. 100%. So I know you've worked with a variety of comics. So, what do you look for in a comedian when you select your shows? What is like top quality that you are looking for when you try to book these people?
Well, there's different categories because we have the openers, we have the features, we have the headliners. Obviously, the headliners, I look for the consistency. That they're gonna close strong because that's what we always need. We always need a strong closer.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Features are somebody that sets up that headliner.
Mm-hmm.
And then the openers are usually people that are just getting going or experienced comics that are just very good at opening up the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
So I,
Absolutely.
I mainly look for consistency.
Mm-hmm.
If I want to get into it more, I check out joke structure,
Mm-hmm.
joke placement, but that's more like fantasy football style of
Right.
doing it. But ultimately, if I see somebody be funny, you know, somebody new, be funny. If it's an opener, then I'll reach out and I'll give them a shot.
Mm-hmm.
If I see somebody that's featuring that's good, I'll get their information. If I see a headliner, I try and contact them,
Mm-hmm.
and be in play, because that's usually how I find headliners.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I get hit up by headliners and features, you
That
know.
I know. That's
Yeah,
awesome. That's awesome. Those are the best when it's somebody that, is popular and now they see something in you and you're like,
yeah.
oh wait, that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's even better when they end up being as funny as you think they are. I ask them for a clip. The ones that reach out to me just to kind of get a gist of what their comedy's like. That way, I can place
Hmm.
them in the right venue,
Correct.
right? Because I don't want to like put a blue comic, which means pretty much dirty comedy, into
Hmm.
like an old folks home or something
Yeah.
like that, or
Correct.
to
It
an
matters.
all ages restaurant.
Correct.
Like all those little intricacies,
Hmm.
really,
Makes a
may,
difference.
it makes a big difference. And the comics are always the anchor.
Hmm.
So that's why I always want to treat my comics the best I can,
Correct.
and give them the best opportunity. And I do a lot of the work ahead by placing them in the right situation, because
Hmm.
I don't want them to bomb. I don't want them to go into a
Hmm.
venue where just because I saw them be funny somewhere doesn't mean they're going to be funny in this particular place.
Right.
Because of the audience and the patrons that
Hmm.
are regulars there. But yeah,
100%.
that's pretty much how I pick my lineups.
Awesome. Yeah, I know it's each venue is different. Like you said, it's like a secret sauce that you have because you've done this for so long. So
Yeah.
you know like what's gonna work, what's not gonna work. You've worked with them, so you know how their energy is on stage with you and your team. So all that matters. So how do you stay relevant in a constantly evolving comedy landscape, especially with social media and short form content as you're documenting your things that you're doing?
Well, the main one is just having shows. Being able to have a show or two, and then being able to have them promoted not just by you but by all the comics and
Mm-hmm.
by the venue itself.
Yeah.
So then word spreads locally at least. I don't need to go viral with any of these comedy shows.
Yep.
The main idea is to get butts in those seats,
Mm-hmm.
and if the
Mm-hmm.
venue and the comics do their job, which is just share the poster, just share the
Mm-hmm.
poster,
Yes.
share the promo, whatever it is, that helps to staying relevant because people see that we're promoting the show,
Mm-hmm.
and that we're having a show first of all, but that we're
Correct.
promoting it, and that
Correct.
it's worth the effort of letting people know that it's there, that
100%.
and according to
And you gotta stay
how we do it.
consistent. You gotta stay
Yeah.
consistent too, because if you're just having the show, posting the pictures, and then you don't post till the next show,
Yeah,
then
no,
they
we repost and repost. We find other ways. We either get comedians clips, whatever they allow us, or we
mm-hmm.
just post pictures of other stuff going on at that venue along with
Correct.
the poster.
Yep.
It just kind of keeping it in cycle.
Yep.
Continuing to remind people what's going
Exactly.
on through your channels, and hopefully having the venue and the comics do the same thing, because sometimes comics are they might have the mentality of like, oh well, it doesn't matter if I promote. It does matter
Mm-hmm.
because you
It
never
does.
know. There might be a friend here or there that might want to
Mm-hmm.
go, and if you don't share,
They don't
no,
know.
nobody's gonna know. So
Exactly.
at
Exactly.
the very least, that's how we stay relevant, by being on their pages, on their social media feeds.
Absolutely.
So there you go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, what's one lesson that you've learned the hard way as an entrepreneur in the comedy space?
Well, I think we touched on it earlier. There's a lot of over competitiveness.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of backstabbing. There's a lot of cronism.
Yes.
Where people will just book their friends. Because
Mm-hmm.
I've done, I don't know, thousands of shows already.
Mm-hmm.
In the time I've done it, and very seldomly do I get invited to be on one of their shows when they put it on.
Mm-hmm.
Or I've even been subject to being attacked by other comics,
It's
you
so
know,
sad. So
and then
sad.
yeah, and instead of them just working their ass off to do better, it's
Mm-hmm.
easier for them to chop somebody down And
That's sad.
like I said before, that happens in music, that happens in art, and anything artistic. It gets overly competitive, and like from my experience, I don't need to be competitive like that.
Mhm.
The competition is between me and myself.
Yes,
Just being able to
absolutely. I
do the
love
best I
that
can.
quote. I love that quote. It is competition is with yourself, not with others. So
Yeah.
I love that. I do truly love that. So we're getting down to the last few questions, and this one is, what advice would you give to up and coming comedians who also want to take control of their careers as producers or entrepreneurs?
Well, it's kind of an easy one. You just go to the best shows in your area and you see how they do it.
Hmm.
And if you can pick their brain, you can ask them, if they're cool enough where you can actually have a conversation about how they go about it. That's what I would do.
Hmm.
That's because when I transitioned from doing just regular production shows to doing comedy shows, I had a notion on how things went. But then
Hmm.
again, I still went to a bunch of comedy shows just to see how the flow goes and how they
Correct.
do it.
Correct.
And then from there, I put my spin on how I would do it.
Yes.
So my best advice is go and check out other comedy shows in your
Hmm.
area,
Hmm.
and see, especially the best ones, and see how they do it. And hopefully you can pinpoint, what makes them successful. And then if you're lucky enough, you can have the producer talk to you afterwards and let you pick his brain. But that one right there is up in the air because sometimes people don't want to share their secrets, and
Yes.
sometimes they shouldn't because it's like, well, we're done. But there's a lot of good people out there that they don't mind, that they're not intimidated, that
Hmm.
they'll share information freely.
Hmm.
Like I'm one of them, and it's come back to haunt me sometimes, but in the end, the fact that I try to help somebody doesn't haunt me. So
Yes,
I'm
and
cool
you're
with that.
always, I know you're always giving back as well, which is a great thing because what you give out comes back. So you want it to be good, so good can come back.
Yeah.
And the more people you help to smile, the better your day is, I feel.
Yep.
Um, so my last question that I ask everyone is, what inspires you daily? What is this one thing that, you wake up in the morning? What is that one thing that inspires you?
What inspires me daily is just to be able to grow. I know I'm already pretty well set on who I am, but
Hmm.
there's always room for growth. There's always room to learn.
Hmm. Absolutely.
To be able to make new connections
Hmm.
and start new projects. So that's what inspires me every day, just to be able to have the opportunity or create the opportunity to do or make something happen.
That's great. That's great. Well, I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on our show today. And for those of you who are watching, you can follow him at Up Comedy Shows. He's on all social media platforms, so you can get in touch with him if you want to book him or any of the comics he's involved with, or if you want to just pick his brain. He's here at upcomedyshows.com. You can follow the further replay at oneselfconsulting.com. So thank you so much, Benji. It's been an honor to
Thanks
have
for
you
having me.
on. I can't wait to come to a future show. And for the audience, I wanted to know what's next for you for Up Comedy. Any upcoming projects or dreams you're chasing or shows that you have coming up?
Well, we're working on trying to do a couple of fundraisers, as
Mm-hmm.
collaborating with oneself, um, and trying to also set up a touring with veterans.
Yes. Yes.
On top of that, for myself, I'm trying to film my hour, my tight hour. That way I
The
can
special.
put it up on YouTube, and let it be the first step towards probably bigger things. But
Great. I'm excited
so
for you. Let me know when that special comes. I'll definitely share, like, and subscribe. And, just like how you've supported me in this journey in the PR world, I appreciate you. And to my audience, take one step today that your future self will thank you for. Signing off, Natasha and Benji.
bye.
Bye. Thanks, guys.